This lesson is on solving literal equations. A literal equation is what happens when we have some sort of formula and we are trying to manipulate that formula to isolate a variable other than what is already isolated. So if we take a look at this question, one thing I want you to notice at first is there's a lot going on. There's a lot of words, there's a lot of numbers, and so one of the difficult parts of mathematics is to be able to figure out what's important here. So take a minute to read over the question. Now we're talking about a fountain that's in Chicago, and we're talking about the circumference of the fountain. And so as you'll notice here, we are given that the circumference of a circle, any circle, is 2 pi r. Obviously where pi is 3.1415, etc. And later it's going to tell us to specifically use 3.14. 2 times r being the radius. If we multiply all of that, we'll get c, the circumference. So the first thing they're asking us to do is to basically not care about anything that's happening here in the question and just solve the equation for r. So the way that we do that is the same way we would if we were solving a variable or solving an equation for x, which is what we're used to doing. So here I have c equals 2 pi r. My goal is to isolate the r, which means I need to get rid of 2 pi. 2 pi is being multiplied by r, so the inverse operation is to divide by 2 pi. Now, the impulse here is to try to simplify this in some way. C over 2 pi, I want to make that into something easier, but you can't. So on this side, notice the 2 and the pi go away. I just have r. So I have r equals c over 2 pi. And that's all I can do. So that's my answer over here is r equals c over 2 pi. There's nothing I can do to simplify that further. Now, for part B, however, they're asking us to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to start with the r equals c over 2 pi. And I'm going to plug in the information that they give me. So notice up here in the question, I've got 133 jets. I've got 14,000 gallons of water per minute. And I've got 880 feet, which is the circumference. So they're throwing extra information in there just to throw you off and see if you're paying attention. Notice the only things I need to solve in this case for r, which is what they're asking me to find, is find the radius. The only thing I need is c, and c is the circumference. They tell me the circumference is 880. So I'm going to plug in 880 here. I'm going to plug in 2, and then pi, they tell me to use 3.14. And that's all I have to do. So I can completely disregard the 133 and the 14,000 because it doesn't matter in the terms of this question that they're asking me. So 880 divided by 2 times 3.14, so order of operations says make sure you do that first. This is 6.28. And when I divide, I get 140.127, and it keeps going. But they ask me to round to the nearest foot. And so to the nearest foot, I would look at the 1 and say the 1 says don't round up. So my answer is 140 feet. So the radius is approximately, that's that squiggly equal sign, 140 feet. For the next one, go ahead and try this on your own, then press play, see how you did. Here we have the surface area, which is given by 4 pi r squared, and that's for a sphere. We're trying to solve the equation for pi. So if I'm solving for pi, I'm trying to get pi by itself. So on each side of that equal sign, I'm going to divide by 4 and also by r squared. 4 and r squared. Now, how did I figure that out? I looked at the side that had the pi, said it's been multiplied by 4 and multiplied by r squared. I want to undo that. Now notice the 4's cancel, the r squareds cancel. On this side, I just have pi. On this side, I have s over 4r squared. Nothing I can do about it, so that's my answer. Pi equals s over 4r squared. The surface area is given to me now. That's obviously going to be my s, which is surface area. So pi equals, s would be 113. And radius is 3, so that's going to go down here. So this is 4 times 3 squared. 4 times 3 squared would be 4 times 9. I'm showing all the steps here. You wouldn't have to necessarily show all of this. 4 times 9 is 36. And then in my calculator, when I take 113 divided by 36, I get, if I can find it, 3.138 repeating. Now they want me to round to 2 decimal places. So that's to the nearest hundredth. Remember, it's tenths and hundredths. So this 8 being greater than 5 says you need to round this 3 up. So my answer is 3.14. So pi approximately equals 3.14, which we already knew because that's what we just used in our last question. Here's one that's a little more complicated. So now we have the area of a trapezoid. This one they're not actually asking us to solve, but they just want us to isolate the formula for B1. B sub 1 means the first base, the length of the first base. So if you're having trouble picturing this, in a trapezoid, you would have a height here that is at a right angle to our base. So I would have a base 1 and a base 2, and it doesn't matter which one you call base 1 and base 2. I would add those together and divide them by 2, which gives them me the average, and then it's kind of like finding the area of a rectangle. So that was a nice little side note. Over here now I have a equals 1/2 height b1 plus b2. Now I'm trying to isolate b1. Okay, that's my job. So the first thing I want to do is, I know this is all in parentheses, so that makes it a little bit sticky. I have to get rid of this 1/2 h first. So I'm going to multiply each side by 2, which is going to get rid of that 1/2, and divide by h. So I can do that, I'll just do that in 2 steps, just so we understand what's going on. I'm going to multiply by 2. On this side I'm going to get 2a, and on this side 1/2 and 2 multiply to 1, so they cancel out. So now I have h b1 plus b2. Again, I'm trying to get b1 by itself, but I can't do that when I still have this in parentheses, so now I have to divide by h. If you wanted to, you could have combined these all into one step, but I've got 2a over h equals b1 plus b2. Notice I don't have to write it in parentheses anymore because I don't have anything left on the outside. I'm trying to get b1 by itself, so I'm going to subtract b2 from each side, which leaves me with my final answer of 2a over h minus b sub 2. That is my equation. Go ahead and try this one on your own and then press play to see how you did. On this one, they give me the formula V equals pi r squared times height. That is the formula for the volume of a cylinder. We're going to solve for h. I'm trying to get h by itself, which means I have to get rid of both pi and r squared on each side, pi r squared. So on this side, pi cancels, r squared cancels, that leaves me with h. On this side, I have v over pi r squared, which is my answer. If you want to write it where the h comes first, even better, v divided by pi r squared. Now these are less formulas, now they're equations. So I'm given the equation negative 2x plus 3y equals 5. I'm trying to solve for y. This comes into play for us quite a bit when we're graphing, because when we graph, we like to have y by itself. We'll get to that in a little while. But this is a really good skill to know how to do. So again, sometimes it's a good idea to draw your little wall, maybe a little straighter than I did. I'm trying to get y by itself, so I'm starting on the side with the y, but furthest away is the minus 2x. To move minus 2x or to cancel it out, I have to add 2x. So I'm going to do that to each side. So on this side, I get 3y. And on this side, I could put 5 plus 2x. I'm going to put 2x plus 5 because once we get into graphing, you'll understand we want to have that x value first. And now I'm going to divide by 3, but I have to divide everything by 3. So you'll see this a couple of different ways. I'm going to write it again over here. Sometimes you'll see it written like this, and then a big divided by 3, and that's okay too. That gives me 2x plus 5 over 3 is my answer, and then I could choose to break it down into 2 separate parts, 2x divided by 3 plus 5 divided by 3. If I do it this way, obviously, I get y equals 2x over 3 plus 5 over 3. So it's really kind of a preference thing. Down the road, this one's going to be the way that you want to go. But for now, depending on what the program actually asks for, this might be an acceptable answer as well. I have ax, minus 3 equals cx plus 7. This is a little bit more complicated. A little bit more complicated. I'm trying to get x by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get all of those x's to one side. So see how I have an x on the left side of my wall and an x on the right side? I don't like that. So I'm going to get this plus 3. I'm going to get the 3 to the right side. And that gives me, ax equals cx plus 10. And then I'm going to move the cx to the other side. So question, can I take ax minus cx and get something like bx? No, you can't. I can just write ax minus cx equals 10. So this whole thing canceled. Now, this is the tricky part. This is a little bit to do with factoring, but see how they both have an x in common? So I can take that x out of both of them, because then if I multiply it back out, I'd get a times x and c times x, and so basically this is factoring, and we will have a whole lesson on factoring down the road. So this is maybe a little bit harder example than I wanted. So I'm trying to get x by itself, so now I'm going to divide by a minus c, divide by a minus c. So on this side, the a minus c as a factor canceled, which gives me x. On this side, I have 10 over a minus c, and that is my answer. I won't make you do those very often. Not for a while, anyway. Here's our last one. Let's go ahead and solve this one for y. Okay, so I have a wall here. I'm trying to get y by itself, so I'm going to subtract 5x, subtract 5x. That gives me 3y on the left, and then I'm going to put negative 5x plus 7. If you would have put 3y equals 7 minus 5x, that's okay too. Down the road when we're graphing, you're going to want that x value before the constant. And now I have to divide by 3, so I'm going to divide everything by 3, and that gives me y equals negative 5/3 x plus 7/3. So I get questions quite often, well, the x is on the top here, but it's out front here. It doesn't matter if you write it on the top or out front. This is the way you're going to want to get used to writing it though, because this will end up being our slope once we start graphing.